Before we begin, here's the context behind this speech. In Washington, government funding battles often turn into high-stakes political showdowns, especially when agencies tied to national security are involved. In this moment on the Senate floor, a Republican senator argues that Democrats are responsible for delaying funding for the Department of Homeland Security. But as with many congressional disputes, the full story often includes competing claims, political strategy, and procedural disagreements over how spending bills should move forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. It has now been 26 days since Homeland Security has been funded, and 51 days since the Democrats have announced their intention not to fund the Department of Homeland Security. The Democrats want the Department of Homeland Security to be closed. How do I know that they want it to be closed? Well, it's because the Democrats are refusing even to talk to Republicans about what sort of deal we may be able to do to get the funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Just this past weekend, my freshman colleague from Alabama, who sits on the Appropriations Committee and has the subcommittee that oversees the Department of Homeland Security, offered the ranking Democrat on appropriations a meeting with our Republican leader, a meeting with the Appropriations Chair, the esteemed senator from Maine, and the White House. And the ranking Democrat refused to even meet, much less negotiate. Republicans want the Department of Homeland Security open. Democrats want to.
Statements like this are common during government funding disputes, where each party tries to frame the political narrative around responsibility and urgency. The Department of Homeland Security is a large federal agency that includes the Coast Guard, TSA, and cybersecurity divisions, meaning that funding interruptions can affect thousands of employees. However, shutdown debates often involve deeper disagreements over policy riders, immigration enforcement, or spending priorities. In other words, while lawmakers highlight the frontline workers affected, such as Coast Guard personnel or TSA agents, the underlying negotiations usually revolve around broader legislative demands. This raises an important question for viewers. When political leaders describe a shutdown or funding delay, how much of the conflict is about policy differences, and how much is about political leverage in negotiations?
Keep it shut down. Democrats are playing politics with our national security and the safety of Americans and people in my home state of Nebraska. The Department of Homeland Security is funded to pay, for example, our Coast Guard. In recent days, our Coast Guard in the Gulf of America just intercepted a shipment of marijuana and cocaine worth about $1.3 million. That's what the Coast Guard does. Keeps us safe from illegal drugs coming into our country. And yet they go unpaid. In fact, Nebraskan called into my office. His son and daughter-in-law in the Coast Guard are deployed right now in Bahrain. They are risking their lives for us. They are risking their lives to keep us safe. And the Democrats won't pay them. Or let's take our TSA agents that handle the security for 1 billion travelers in the United States every year. They, too, are working without pay because the Democrats will not fund the Department of Homeland Security. TSA agents process about 2.5 million people every day going through our airports to keep us safe. And the Democrats won't pay them. I stood here not long ago, sadly, talking about our air traffic controllers. I read letters from them and how the government shutdown that Chuck Schumer led the Democrats on just a short while ago put pressure on their families. Many of those air traffic controllers were veterans. The minority leader led the Democrats on the longest shutdown in American history. Does nobody remember that? What it did to the families? And yet the Democrats are doing the same thing again now in the Department of Homeland Security. The agency that is assigned to keep us safe from the standpoint of cybersecurity, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, has furloughed 1,200 of their 2,000 people. Only 800 people are working right now, putting us at risk. We have a conflict in the Middle East right now with Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. That country that regularly chants death to America. We know that Iran has plotted assassinations of our president, other officials, and dissidents here on our own very soil. And yet the Democrats are not willing to fund the agency that is meant to help keep us safe. Again, they are playing politics with our national security and our safety. There is common ground we can come to be able to get the Department of Homeland Security open. But if the Democrats refuse to even meet with Republicans to discuss this, the only conclusion I can draw is that they don't want the Department of Homeland Security open. And so they put all of us at risk, including my fellow Nebraskans. Democrats must come to the table to meet. We must reopen the Department of Homeland Security. We must pay our heroes in the Coast Guard, TSA, Secret Service, CISA. All these people who are working right now to keep us safe are keeping us safe during this conflict in the Middle East with the largest state sponsor of terrorism. The least the Democrats can do is agree to meet with leadership and have a conversation. This must end. Democrats must talk. Mr. President, I yield my time. Thank you.
This speech reflects a familiar dynamic in Washington. When government funding deadlines approach, political rhetoric often intensifies. Lawmakers highlight the real-world consequences, from unpaid federal workers to national security concerns, while blaming the opposing party for the impasse. But behind these speeches are complex negotiations over spending priorities, policy conditions, and legislative strategy. For viewers and voters, the challenge is separating political messaging from the underlying policy debate. So what do you think? Is this primarily a matter of political brinkmanship, or a genuine dispute over how national security agencies should be funded? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you value balanced, fact-based breakdowns of major political moments, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis.